All right, I think we are good. You know, usually after the rainstorms, there tends to be some spotty service coverage. Sometimes the internet can be knocked out, but we are back. We actually just started a live stream about 15 minutes ago. We were checking out some of the raccoons over there. Very cool. I remember when I used to live around here, I would always take walks very late at night in Central Park, and I would always see a lot of the raccoons coming out of the trash cans, and I actually kind of like them. They're actually pretty cool creatures. Hey, Penelope is here. What's up? This is Rocky Raccoon, checked into his room only to find. Yeah, that is true. That is funny. So everybody, we are here outside the Plaza Hotel overlooking Billionaires Row. The tower with the gold top is 220 Central Park South. Excuse me. Then you have Central Park Tower, which is beautiful. And then the Steinway building. Carson is here, says, was at a baseball game last weekend and a raccoon ran through the stands. Well, there's a ton of them tonight at Central Park. I wish we could kind of go back over there, but there's a big dead zone right where we started the stream over here. But it's good to see everybody back. Dennis Henry says, I was always told to avoid raccoons. Aren't they afraid of humans? Could they have rabies? So I think that is true, but there's a slight caveat to that. I believe if the raccoons are out during the day, you should try to avoid them. But if they're at night, I mean, they're nocturnal creatures. Usually if they're out at night, that means it's pretty normal. They're just looking for food. But if they're out during the day, that could mean they're sick or they have rabies or something like that. But I think they're kind of cool. I think they're kind of nice. Jared Covey, welcome, my friend. Good to see you. Karen Alcatraz is here. Roberta, welcome. RJ, happy Memorial Day weekend to everybody. Bagels and Walks, welcome, my friend. Sanjib says, hey, Tom from Montreal. Always good to see you, Sanjib. Carson is here. Welcome. Dennis, Sean, good to see you, Sean. Cat says, did you get attacked by the raccoons? Close. Nicole is here. Welcome, Nicole. Hope you're having a good Saturday. Jeff says, this is Tom reporting live from New York City. Indeed it is. So we gave a quick introduction before, but tonight we're going to be talking about the potential shift in American consumer spending habits. We did get some data out last week. We did not have time to cover it last week because I was absent streaming, I think Wednesday and Thursday back to back. So I was on business meetings, but we did get some key economic data out. Obviously, U.S. households boosted spending for the fourth straight month in April, while simultaneously savings rates fell to the lowest level in 14 years. So about 2 weeks ago on the stream, we were covering in depth Home Depot's earnings, Walmart's earnings, and Target's earnings. Now, we sort of covered this already, but one of the most interesting things about those earnings reports is that revenues actually came in relatively across the board, generally better than expectations on Wall Street. But judging by this data, if you could say, oh, you know, that means the American consumer is strong, they're spending more, consumer spending is up. But if we dig a little bit deeper and we understand that the savings rate fell to the lowest level in 14 years, well, this could mean one of two things. So here's sort of my thesis on it. And I was talking this over with a friend earlier today, is that as the prices of goods and services, whether that be energy prices, whether that be the price of food, even rent, as that goes up, Americans may be, quote unquote, on paper be spending more, but they're not getting additional products and services, and they're not getting more. They're being forced to spend more, and sometimes even taking home or taking back less. And I think that shows up in a lot of the earnings reports. You know, we heard again from the CEO of Target that said they actually have a surplus of inventory in their electronics department. Anything from TVs, sometimes you could be talking about appliances, things like that. But they're seeing consumers spend more on foods and things like that. But one of the key differences in the consumer spending in the United States, as we've heard from the CEO of Walmart and Target, is that Americans are shifting away from name brands to more store brands. So for example, if you walk into Walmart and you want to buy a box of Lucky Charms or something like that, that would be considered a name brand, right? The premium quality brands. Now we're actually seeing consumers shifting away from purchasing name brand items to more store-bought household items. So for example, like the Walmart brand or the Target brand or something like that. And the CEO of Walmart actually said there's higher gross margins, or the profit margins on the sales of Walmart branded cereals and things like that, milks, really anything that's Walmart branded, the profit margins are actually higher. So one of the interesting things, in addition to all that we heard from the CEO of Walmart, is that they are going to be adjusting the way they advertise to consumers this summer. So this is what he said, and just for those of you who don't know, we are outside the Plaza Hotel. They are going to be shifting away from premium items in the store in terms of advertising to the more high margin general brand. So maybe that'll even put an additional bump into earnings and cause consumers to spend even more, because if you think about it, if you go to the store and buy a box of Lucky Charms, in some places it's like $5. But you can get the Walmart brand for maybe $2.50, maybe even less sometimes. So maybe that will force the consumer to stock up on those type of items, driving earnings. Because I never knew that actually, but the store branded items are actually higher margin. They have more gross margin in store brand as opposed to name brand. Dutchman is here. Welcome, Dutchman. Sean Art. Good to see you, Sean. The Devil is here. Says, hey, how's it going? It is going good. It was a crazy storm, probably for about 15-20 minutes earlier today. We did a quick live stream. But tonight it's actually a pretty good night. Things are drying up. It's not too hot, not too humid. Running at altitude says, I buy a lot of Kirkland, which is a Costco brand. Yeah, so running at altitude. In the Wall Street Journal today, they actually did a really, really nice cover piece talking about Costco, Target, and Walmart. And one of the things that they said about Costco, to your point, the CEO came on and he said, if you were to walk throughout one of our stores, you wouldn't know that there's a bunch of recession talk across the mainstream financial networks. Because when we look at the economic data, yes, it shows that consumers are potentially strapped for cash. Credit card spending has now reached an all-time record high. The savings rate has plummeted to a 14-year low, which potentially means that even though consumer spending is going up, the way that consumers are fueling that spending is a forced way, because they are forced to dip into savings. But the Costco CEO, he's like, look, if you were to ever walk one of our stores, they're packed. Business is booming for us, so you would never know that we could potentially be heading into recession. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But then again, if we think about what the CEO of Home Depot said, he's like, even though consumer spending is up, the average ticket price, so if you walk into Home Depot and let's say the average ticket price, you walk out and the average receipt is about $100, now it's like $125. I forget the exact numbers, but so being that spending is up, almost about the same, if not a little less amount of products and services are being sold. So it seems like consumers are actually just spending more money and potentially getting less, if not the same. ABC Friday is here. So was that a Lambo? I think it was. I think it was one of those newer Lamborghini, what's it called? Like the SUV style Lamborghinis. Fercho says, hey Tom from Ecuador, with my family watching your videos are beautiful and interesting. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully you're doing well in Ecuador. We have Techno Pink joining us. Says, hello, welcome Techno Pink. Techno Pink is our consulting friend who works at EY from the Dominican Republic. So I hope you're doing well, Techno Pink. I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but last night on the stream, this fountain was filled with soap. I think somebody poured a bottle of dish soap in here, but now the fountain is now drained. Photo says that is the definition of inflation. Yeah, and so speaking of inflation data, so for the first time since March, even though CPI numbers are on a tear, we have decelerated a little bit. So Wednesday we heard, and we covered this yesterday on the stream, Wednesday we heard from the Federal Reserve, and we're pretty much guaranteed, it's a lock, that we're going to get additional rate hikes to the tune of 50 basis points each time. But Fed President Bostic did come out and say that should we get conclusive inflation data by September that is showing that inflation is indeed cooling, there is the possibility for a hold on a September rate hike. Maybe. So we have to watch that. A lot of people are asking in the chat, Ed says, how do you think crypto is going to do? So I think you guys know sort of my viewpoints on that. One of the other topics of conversation we have to touch on again is a follow-up on the Terra Luna pyramid scheme. Now, I have to say allegedly, right? I have to say alleged. But essentially that's what it was. So a lot of people lost tons and tons of money. I don't think people really realize how big that Terra Luna stablecoin debacle actually was, to the tune of billions upon multi-billion dollars wiped literally off the face of the earth. So there was an interesting article today in the Wall Street Journal that was actually interviewing a couple people who lost money in that scheme, which is really, really heartbreaking. So I think that there needs to be a distinction made between Bitcoin and the rest of crypto, because you guys know my take. I think the vast majority of the alternative coins, the alternative quote-unquote, air quote assets, are either, from the limited knowledge of securities law that I know and that I've studied, these are securities. In which case, if the SEC puts a stamp of approval and says, yes, these altcoins are securities, these things are going to go to zero fast, and there actually could be some legal repercussions for these founders who are soliciting these unlicensed securities. So that's my take. I know it's up for debate. But I think over the long term, as the SEC puts additional regulatory clarity, which we need, it'll allow for real institutional investors to get involved into Bitcoin. And I know, a lot of my buddies who run hedge funds, yes, they are now actively trading Bitcoin. But when I talk about institutional adoption, what I'm really talking about is the land grab out there of sovereign wealth. And you're really not going to get any sovereign wealth funds allocating any amount of their portfolio to this unless there's clear-cut regulatory clarity. Because right now it's essentially the Wild West. There's no regulation. There's really no stamp of approval to say, are these tokens or coins or whatever you want to call them securities or unlicensed securities? So that's sort of my take on that. But I was reading an article today in the Wall Street Journal talking about the Terra Luna debacle. And essentially, Luna is one of the crypto assets, and there's also a stable coin component, an algorithmic stable coin. For whatever that means. I think it's just a dressed up, because essentially what you were supposed to do is, if the peg of the stable coin was ever lost, you could essentially burn your Luna token to try to reestablish the peg. But what happens in these sort of situations when a stable coin loses its peg is investors start to lose confidence in the particular project. And when investors lose confidence, they start to pull their money out of that said project or that said investment, causing what's called a bank run, and the whole thing collapses. So it's very similar to a Ponzi scheme. I know it's going to cause a firestorm in the comments and in my email box, but essentially what people were doing is they were converting their stable coin and putting it on the Anchor protocol, in which case it is a DeFi or decentralized finance protocol where you could lend your stable coin out for a 19.5% interest rate or yield, which is, I mean, if anybody I mean, it's never good, it's never polite, or it's never right to victim blame. That's not what I'm doing, but if somebody came to you and said, hey, lend me your money and I will give you a guaranteed 19.5% rate of return, well, you can pretty much say that that's some sort of a scheme or a fraudulent act. But a lot of people did it. And, there was, in the Wall Street Journal, they were writing about this one guy who was a doctor who put $170,000 to lend out the stable coin on the Anchor protocol, and it went to zero. So now he has nothing. There was another story about a teacher who did the same thing. I believe it's $75,000. And it's just really bizarre that people would fall for this. But I don't want to victim blame, because I don't think that is good. Obviously, it's the fault of the people who created the project. But I think what we could all learn from this is if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. I mean, anything who's guaranteeing you a 19.5 or 20% rate of return for lending out your stablecoin is probably not true, and is probably not sustainable. And I know these platforms, they try to cover their backs by saying, hey, this is not a risk-free rate of return. There is, any investment has some sort of risk to it. I get that, but at some point it's a little bit disingenuous in my view. So I think the good thing that's going to come out about this is there's going to be concrete regulatory clarity in relation to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which I think is much, much needed. But the government is always late to the game. The government always cleans up the bodies, the dead bodies after, and then, puts a Band-Aid over it. So the SEC is going to come in here, they're going to clean up the bodies. People are going to try to get restitution from this. They're not going to get anything. And then, we'll start a new cycle. El Fantasma says Luna was always going to crash just for the fact that it was pegged to the US dollar. There was no withdrawal limit and it was nothing to trust. Remember Mt. Gox? I do remember Mt. Gox. Solo 401, good to see you. Always a pleasure. Honest says hi, Brian. Good to see you. Well, I think what they were trying to do, Mystery Girl says, Tom, which microphone do you use? Starting a channel, don't know which microphone to get. So I don't even know, to be honest, which microphone I'm using, to be totally transparent with you. I just went on Amazon, I typed in wired microphone, and I bought the first one. It was like $15, so, but I think it's working pretty good. Jacob is here, says, hey Tom, I don't think the government should tell me how to spend my own money. If I want to buy an NFT, I shouldn't have to qualify. I should be allowed to buy it and me take the risk. Yeah, so Jacob, that is a good point, right? But you do need some sort of regulatory clarity around the cryptocurrency environment. Because if you don't have an environment of regulatory clarity, it becomes a breeding ground for nefarious activity. Now, I've been involved in and owned Bitcoin since late 2016, 2017, so I'm actually a big proponent of it. But like any new emerging technology, there will be nefarious actors that try to take advantage of people. So I think that the vast majority of NFT projects and all this stuff are just big money grabs. I've seen this time and time again. So I think if you want institutional adoption to this, which means, people can own this in retirement accounts, and pension funds can own this, and sovereign wealth funds can have exposure to Bitcoin, you need some sort of regulation here. And I actually wrote a piece about this in the Behind the Street newsletter. So if you type !news, NEWS in the chat, I actually wrote almost over 2,000, maybe 3,000 word piece on why you need some sort of regulatory clarity around this, specifically with stablecoins. Because here's the deal, the concept of a stablecoin is actually fantastic. And I think that if you had a stablecoin that was registered with the SEC and that had to produce documentation, hold on, we'll just let these guys pass. And they had to produce documentation showing that their stablecoin was actually backed up by something. Because that's the issue we have going on now with Tether, which is another one of those stablecoins. So there's a lot of argument on the street and in the investment community about, is Tether actually backed up or is it just fluff? In which case that would be a Ponzi scheme. So just like with any ETF, periodically, if you run an exchange traded fund, you have to disclose to investors what is in the ETF, right? So I think if we have a stable coin, maybe if it's regulated and they had to give reporting on if it was actually truly backed by something, that would create an entire ecosystem for institutions to go in and more freely and easily trade crypto assets in a safe way where they know that their client money will be safe. Because here's the thing. Let's say if you're a very large hedge fund or something like that and you're running a ton of money. If you have investor funds and you're trading in and out of, let's say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, well, you're using the stable coin for liquidity to more easily trade in and out of Bitcoin and Ethereum as opposed to having to sell back into physical cash, which I get. But assuming you're a big hedge fund, and a lot of hedge funds did blow up from this, and you're selling back to the Terra Luna stablecoin, and then it loses its peg and it goes to zero, well, all of your investors are totally wiped out overnight, and that's not good. So I think the more clarity in terms of the regulatory environment there is, the more in terms of market capitalization the entire environment will grow. Elle says Neo is one coin that is working on that right now. Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff is a little nonsense, but Anthony Tripp says Tether is another scam. Yeah. DJC says problem is that it's regulatory, then BTC/alts couldn't be considered or even used as money, given the Constitution states clearly that only U.S. government has power to mint coin. Yeah, so I think that the SEC has clearly said that Bitcoin is. I think Bitcoin is more of like a commodity. I don't think it's actually a currency. Middle class says, do you get more views from New York City or Miami? From New York City. Diamond Dave says, good evening, Tom. Yes, we did. NMB045 says, regulation is good because stable coins backed securities can cause system-wide problems just like in 2008. Agreed. Let's see who else we have. Dutchman is here, welcome. Yeah, Dutchman says some people looking for get rich quick will always blow out. And I've seen this. I've seen this back in 2017. There was another big altcoin bubble where these things went to stratospheric levels and then were washed out and blown out. So we've seen this before. But in every new emerging technology, you have that junk that's going to get washed out. You see it in the stock market too. Look at all of the SPACs, the special purpose acquisition companies, which I've written about ad nauseum on the Behind the Street newsletter, warning about the dangers of buying these SPACs, because a lot of these companies that merged with these SPACs are either, sometimes they're pre-revenue or they have very little revenues, no earnings. And the worst thing about it is the projections, or the financial projections of these companies allegedly are fraudulent, which I think they are, but I'll digress on that. Snoopy says, have taken public speaking classes in school. Nice. Yeah, I think public speaking is definitely very important skill, so that's awesome. Dan says, Tom, I'm more interested in Tether actually getting audited and seeing what they can find. Tether is the Fed of crypto, in my opinion. Yeah, and to your point, Dan, if you want, if we're talking about the biggest institutional space you could get, which is sovereign wealth. So aside from the hedge funds that are running, your 150 million to 300 million, that's great. But if you want actual sovereign wealth, nation states to be able to get access to having maybe a 1% or 2% allocation to Bitcoin, it's not going to happen unless there's clarity around it. And when you have things like this, a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme blow up, and people losing all their money, it puts a really, really bad name for the space. And it sets you back probably 1 or 2 years. But like I said, I think that Gary Gensler at the Fed, it's taken him long enough. I think he's really going to key in on this and at least make some real regulatory moves here. Jacob says government has bad actors too, so their own regulations may potentially not be in good faith. Yeah, Jacob, I think you're right. I think you may be correct. But at the end of the day, the United States financial markets and the US equity markets are by far the gold standard for global equity markets, like bar none. Other nations look to the SEC for securities law and things like that. And I think that's why people are looking for the SEC to make a decision. Eric20 says, has your business sales been impacted by sentiment change from the market drop? So Eric, that's a very good question. No, actually, because I tend to deal with larger enterprise customers. So this is a really good topic to explore. So we'll spend some time on this. So obviously I'm in tech sales. Early on in my career, I would sell into small and medium-sized businesses that tend to be a little bit more cash-strapped. That was tough. But luckily, when I was in SMB sales, very early on in my career, we were in the strongest economy raging bull market ever. So I was consistently always blow out my numbers, crush my numbers with ease. Now that I've moved up the stack into enterprise sales, IT departments are generally more cost conscious, but they tend to have the budgets for these solutions, if that makes sense. Because when you're dealing with a large enterprise customer, let's say a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 50 company, these are very, very well established, oftentimes publicly traded companies that tend to earn money, like they have earnings. And when you're that big of a size in an organization, it's sort of like you need these solutions, so you have to do it anyway. And it's easier for them to come up with budget for those solutions. Here's the only drawback. The drawback is the sales cycles are ridiculously long. So a lot of the deals that are just closing now, I've been working on for almost a year. So just know that when you go into enterprise sales, you could be working on a deal for a year just to get to the finish line, and then you find out they go with another vendor. And that's just the reality, because when you're dealing with that large of an enterprise, they have to make sure 100% that they bid it out across multiple different companies, and they settle on a solution that's going to integrate well with their current IT infrastructure. There's a lot of moving parts. So I think it's going to be a couple quarters for me to actually see, if any, a slowdown in business, if that makes sense. Just because the sales cycles that I'm in now started 8 months ago, 9 months ago. So for me to see a material slowdown in my business, it's probably going to take maybe 2 or 3 quarters to see if IT departments or big companies are going to say, okay, we need to stop spending or cut back on our budget significantly. But right now, I have 3 big deals that are just coming to close, and these are giant, that I've been working on for, so one of them almost 2 years. But I could imagine if I was back in SMB sales, selling into small, medium-sized businesses, I could almost guarantee that it would be a little bit more difficult. Hey, M Science is Tom. Where are you in New York City? So, it's a good question. This is West 51st Street, 5th Avenue, right outside of the St. Patrick's Cathedral right here. Hey, ACOATL. This is hello from Tijuana, Mexico. Good to see you. Jared Covey, welcome. Jason N says, what cathedral is that? Well, this is St. Patrick's. We were just outside of St. Thomas. St. Thomas Church is one of my favorite churches in New York City. But that's a really good question. I think that if I'm going to see a slowdown, it's probably going to be at least 2 quarters for it to actually show up, in my view. But if anybody is looking to get into tech sales, let's say if it's enterprise software sales or enterprise hardware, whatever sort of solution you're selling, there's drawbacks to being an enterprise, but at the end of the day, when you're selling to large corporations, they truly the only thing that they care about is the value that they're going to get from your product or service. The money, it almost is immaterial to them to some point, because it's not like a mom and pop shop that is living paycheck to paycheck. You know, if I'm selling into Goldman Sachs and they need a specific type of software or whatever we're selling them, they have the money to spend. It just depends on how valuable your product is to the business, and that's why enterprise sales tends to be a lot more technical. So not only do I have to sell the IT department on it, I have to sell operations, I have to sell HR, because each and every single department has to sign off on it to say, is this going to increase the operation or operational efficiencies of the business, or is it going to make life harder on us? How is the transition going to play out? How is the integration and the deployment going to play out? It's a lot of moving parts. Hey, Jose is here. Says hello from Puerto Rico. What's up, Jose? Good to see you. I hope to visit Puerto Rico very soon, by the way. Western Mass Dave says, hey Tom, Boogie Bob did a beautiful live from St. Patrick's Cathedral the other day. I'm gonna have to check that out. Eric 20 says, did you cover Snapchat's earnings? So last week, Snapchat didn't report earnings, but the CEO of their company actually came out and gave some horrible guidance from their company, saying that they are going to revise down their own revenue targets and their own EBITDA targets. But then again, you know, Snapchat is one of those companies that is not profitable. I think they had 1 profitable quarter on an adjusted EPS basis. NMB045 says, the day you start selling to Goldman Sachs, Tom, time to pop the champagne bottle. I've done a deal with Goldman Sachs. I've done a deal with Goldman Sachs already. Samantha R, welcome. So, but I mainly sell into healthcare because for me, hold on, I'm debating on whether I should cross the street or not. For me, the way I got my start, I wasn't really vertical specific, but I said, okay, what is the largest TAM or total addressable market? And if I'm selling a solution focused around employee retention, number one, you want to sell into a market that is expanding and growing. So you have to look at the sectors in the economy or the jobs market that is explosive growth. And the fastest growing profession in the United States right now is a home healthcare aide or a home healthcare worker. I couldn't even believe it when I heard it as well, but the fastest growing profession is a home health aide in the United States. So if we can sell solutions to home healthcare agencies to not only increase operational efficiencies, whether that be through EVV software, EMR software, or EVV stands for electronic visit verification. So for example, a lot of the home healthcare agencies that I used to consult with would have their 8,000 home health aides literally clocking in and out on physical paper timesheets and that was a huge burdensome not only for the aides but for the patients. And there was also a lot of fraudulent activity going on with that, with forgery and things like that. So new electronic visit verification software that we can deploy throughout that suite will make it a seamless punch in and out on a mobile device. And the good thing about that is the punch will not register on the home health aide's mobile device only if their GPS coordinates are turned on and the GPS coordinates match up with the coordinates of the patient. Because a lot of the times what was happening, especially here in New York, the home health aide would say, yeah, I was at XYZ patient's house. After investigation, it turned out they never even showed up, and they were paying for that case anyway. So, but as I was working with home health care agencies, I have so much respect for home health aides. I think they are by far the hardest working people I have ever seen, and they are the most necessary people to have, and I think they should get paid a lot more than they do. So here we are at Rockefeller Center. Yeah, the ABX girls is the big issue with home health aides, is horrible salaries along with COVID, you're right. So ABX girl, you hit the nail right on the head. So a lot of times what we try to do, or I've done, is I said, look, if you have 100% turnover rate, so it's very common in the home health care industry where you could turn over 100% of your employees in a year. That's actually very common. So we have to ask ourselves, why are these aides quitting, right? And when I would talk to a lot of the C-suite, they say, oh, they're quitting because they're making $15 an hour and they could just get another job. And I'm like, no, that's not why. You have to put yourself in your employee's shoes and ask questions. You have to say, what are you upset about this job? What could we do to make your job easier, right? You need to provide your employees the tools that they need to do their job. So what we found through our research is that the vast majority of home health aides in the state of New York are either first-generation immigrants. A lot of them are here on visa. A lot of them, English is their second language. English is not even their first language. So the experience for these home health aides to sign up and get the job, the agency would say, oh, that's perfect. Thank you for signing up to be a home health aide. You have to download this application, this software, integrate this on your personal device, and have fun. Go ahead and do it. And these aides are 55, 60 years old. They don't know how to do that. So no wonder why they're churning like crazy. So what these agencies have to do is from day one provide the tools to these home health aides that they need to do their job. So for example, they need to provide a mobile device that is kitted in their native language. So if the aide speaks Creole, if the aide speaks French, if the aide speaks Spanish, that device needs to be provisioned in their native language. And the software, like the EVV software, has to be automatically downloaded. And if that's the case, it's going to be extremely easy for these aides to do their job, and it's going to increase employee retention. Yeah, Perry Kirby, you're right. So consolidation and mergers make vertical markets or business segments increase the sales cycle. You're right. Angelica says, hey Tom, can you talk to my boss and give them some tips, please, and thank you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Ed says it's such a burn and churn industry, and it shouldn't be, right? So a lot of the agencies that I've been working with, we've been able to really turn their businesses around, because at the end of the day, what I like to tell my customers is energy is going to flow to the path of least resistance. And if it's very cumbersome for these aides to do their job, they're gonna leave. But if it's seamless, if you provide them with the tools in their native language and it is seamless, they're gonna stay at the agency. But if you make it very cumbersome and you throw all of the added work on them, they're gonna leave, obviously. Hey, Sophie M is here. What's up, Sophie? Good to see you. Hey, Jacob is here. Says that makes sense. It is easy to do and fairly inexpensive, especially with HaaS and SaaS services that exist at the moment. Yeah. I think you're 100% right. So that is what I sold. I used to sell all of that stuff and still do. Hold on, I want to show you guys Rockefeller Center here. Beautiful day, beautiful night here at Rockefeller Center. One of my favorite things about 30 Rock right now is all the American flags outside for Memorial Day. Looks fantastic. Let me read some of the chats. Hey, Samantha R says it's busy here tonight. Indeed it is. Captain Freedom, good to see you. Hey, Marty Lewis, happy Memorial Day weekend. It's good to see you, Marty. Daniel G is here from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Good to see you, Daniel G. Earnings fat chains, or airing fat chains, because New York is full of swingers. I don't know what that means. Megan says, I wonder how Airbnb will fare with housing market oversold. I'm actually a big fan of Airbnb. I'd never buy the stock. But I think platforms like Airbnb, I think another one, Vrbo, I forget how you pronounce it. I think they're making home ownership a real possibility for a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Ann is here, says they got fancy lighting up on the skating rink. Good to see you, Ann. Cooking Bro says, hey Tom, good to see you, my friend, welcome. Rob is here, says hi Tom, good to see you, Rob. Hopefully you're well. Eric20 says, hey Tom, do you think mortgage rates have peaked for the year? I don't think so, but what are your thoughts on that? I always like to ask the chat, because sometimes I can feel that I'm telling too much. And I think a lot of people in the chat know more than me. But I think we could probably see 7% rates. I think right now the average 30-year fix is 5.25%. Above 5% for the first time since 2011, I think. Hey, Anonymous Dude 123 says, thank you, Walks from Wall Street, for the content. Thank you. Snoopy says, have you taken public speaking classes in school? I have not. Well, I actually took one speech class, but I don't think that really helped with anything. But I appreciate the compliment. Thank you so much. Anthony Tripp says, hey Tom, mortgage rates will be pushed up by the Federal Reserve. Yeah, Anthony Tripp, I think you're right, because, you know, we heard from the Fed. We heard from the Fed on Wednesday, and they said to expect a couple more 50 basis point rate hikes. But what they also said is that pending additional data about inflation, so should inflation data come back where it's easing by September, we could possibly forego a rate hike in September. Maybe. So that is still to be determined. But like you said, you know, the main driver of this market is the Federal Reserve. Because obviously we've been talking about this ad nauseum. The number one thing to look at in terms of stocks or valuation is the value of future cash flows of these companies. And a lot of tech companies have earnings predicated far into the future. So if you don't have any present earnings, the market isn't going to be willing to pay a premium valuation for your company when interest rates start to go up, because your future earnings are worth less than present value. Anthony Tripp says 50 basis points is huge. Yeah, well, it could be worse, I guess. It could be 75 basis points. Hey, Megan says, what happened that helped us get past the oversold housing bubble in the early 2000s so we can utilize that again for 2022? Well, everything, especially the housing market, is predicated on rates. And I would say ever since the lows of 2008, what's really reinflated a housing bubble is artificially suppressed interest rates, right? because when borrowing costs are essentially zero, people can theoretically afford more house than they actually probably should in a normalized rate environment. Hey, Dennis Henry says, Tom, years ago I had a mortgage at 13.5%. Yeah, so I mean, to your point, Dennis, if we really think about it, on a historical basis, 5% rates is actually still Sean Art, good to see you. Hey, Line Sync, welcome. All right, so let's continue on our walk down Fifth Avenue. Dennis Henry, you're in Arizona, very nice. Mystery Girl says, are the prices of buying a house going to go down, do you think? I think it will, but then again, I think that's a good thing. And so here's the reason why I think it's a good thing, because on the largest single study, so the largest study ever done of self-made millionaires, meaning people who didn't inherit their wealth or something like that. So the largest study ever done, over 10,000 millionaires in the United States, first generation that didn't inherit their wealth. The vast majority of those millionaires that were self-made have the vast majority of their net worth actually made up in equity in their home. So what does that mean? Well, here's what it means, and here's the concerning thing. As the United States moves deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole into a two-tier society, as that wealth gap really continues to expand, well then by definition it's going to be harder for people in the lower class to climb up the ladder into the middle class, then the top 10%, the 5%, 1%. You get the picture. So what we've been seeing right now is record institutional buying of housing, not only in multifamily but single family. So if you have large institutional investors buying up a lot of these properties to use as rentals, well, it's pricing a lot of mom and pop investors or first-time home buyers out of the market. And again, I think that is really due to the Fed. I don't like to play the blame game, but it's really the fault of the Federal Reserve making interest rates artificially low. Because who has the most access to credit? Think about it. It's not a person like me. But if I'm a big established company or an institution with billions of dollars, I pretty much have an unlimited credit line where I could borrow money for free, essentially, right? Assuming that CPI is running at right about 8.99%. And if I could borrow money at 3%, well, then that's free money, right? And the vast majority of people who have access to that liquidity is not the retail guy, it's the institutions. So I think now that rates are going up, could we see a little bit of damage done to the housing market? Of course, absolutely. But if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're in your mid to late 20s, I think you should probably be looking forward to that opportunity, because it'll give you an opportunity to get into the market, maybe buy your first deal or your first rental property, your first duplex or triplex or whatever. That's the way I would think about it. Could there be another 2008 type scenario? Possibly, but the only reason why I don't think we'll have that 2008 type scenario again is because the biggest issue in 2008 was the underwriting was egregious. So you had people that were qualifying for loans who had no proof of income, very low credit scores, sometimes no credit at all, And now those underwriting standards or those lending standards are actually pretty good and pretty hard. So, photos from around New York says, Tom, the painting to your left sold for $125 million.
Yeah.
Which one was that? Wow. This one? Photos? Musa Assad, good to see you. This is New York City. Jimmy B says Consumer Price Index. Welcome, Jimmy B. And hopefully you are hopefully you're having a great Memorial Day weekend so far. Ed says a lot of hedge funds are buying up houses. Megan says mortgage costs less than rent. I don't advise debt, yet housing is perhaps a unique situation where it saves money. Credit should be used with caution, though it isn't usually, says Megan. Yeah, and I think, I think that's a very, very slippery slope that people could fall down to. So they say, hey, my rent is $2,000 a month, but if I buy a house, my mortgage with the taxes and insurance will be $1,500. So the deal makes sense. Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily, and here's why. A lot of consumers are people who think like that. You have to be well capitalized, because what happens when you're a renter and your roof leaks? You call the landlord and they fix it. What happens if your AC blows out or your furnace blows out? That liability is not on you. However, if you're a homeowner, all of that extra liability is now on you. So that's why I never advise people to claim that they can afford a house just based on the monthly payment. You have to make sure you factor in everything else. What are the property taxes forecasted to go up in your particular neighborhood? How old is the house? Is it going to need a new HVAC system? Is it going to need a new roof? That's 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand. So depending on your situation, a house could be a real money pit. But if you can find the appropriate deal and the property will cash flow if you want to rent it out, something like that, or you want to house hack it, then yes, I think that's a great point there, that many people would be better off buying as opposed to renting. But if we just go based upon the fact that the monthly payment is going to be less, I think that can provide a little bit of a misguided sense of security, I would say, to people, maybe. M. Sign says, in Canada, the housing market is on fire. Yeah, so Canada is less affordable in terms of single-family housing than the United States. I think somebody in the chat was sending me crazy emails about how a starter home right outside of Toronto, Canada, was going for $900,000 US. Really crazy to think about, but it's true. Hey, Marcelo Gill says, hey, Tom. The Consumer Price Index CPI soared to an 8.3% annual rate in April. The federal government reported Wednesday. What do you think is next? Yeah, so even though that is an egregious, even though that is a really horrible number, that is actually slightly lower than what we saw last month. So maybe that is starting to signal that inflation could potentially be peaking in the United States, which would be a good thing, hopefully. In which case, that number prompted Fed President Bostic to come out and say, even though we are very strong on raising interest rates to the tune of 50 basis points from here on out at every single Fed meeting, come September, should we see additional data points relating to inflation potentially cooling or tapering off the United States, we could have the possibility of no rate hike in September. Maybe. That is what Bostic did say. Anonymous Dude says, Tom, if it's been mentioned, but there's another window open for this stream and people were waiting in. What do you mean by that? Don Smith, so the orange painting over there. Interesting. So since Marcelo is in the chat, we'll take a walk to UBS because I believe Marcelo works here at UBS. So we'll take a trip over there. Eric 20s is still waiting for the Russia sanctions to work. Yeah, so we dedicated a stream to that too. I think all of that is total nonsense. And here's why. I don't really like to talk about that too much because we run the risk of getting demonetized and shadow banned. But essentially, here's what I don't understand. Everybody around the world is sanctioning Russia, and I think everybody could probably agree that, yeah, you know, Russia's doing a horrible, horrible thing. They deserve the sanctions. But here's the dog and pony show where it starts. Then we buy all of their energy. So we're sanctioning them, and then countries like Germany and a lot of the other people in the EU, hold on one second, let me just make a move around that, buy their energy. So from one hand, we're giving the appearance of doing something, and then on the other hand, we're literally funding them, which doesn't... Anyway, I'll digress. I don't want too much of a political stream tonight. But now we are near Radio City Music Hall. We're gonna walk up one more block by the Nürburgring Berman building and the UBS building. And then we will head back down towards the Empire State Building tonight. We'll check out what color it is. But I've noticed the city is really packed for Memorial Day weekend, which is pretty good. But one of the things that we were supposed to talk about tonight, I want to touch on really, really quickly, is the Wall Street Journal ran a really good piece, very, very well-written piece today in the paper, talking about Walmart, talking about Target, Costco, a lot of those retailers, right? Also the Dollar General. And one of the things that these CEOs have noted is that even though consumers are technically spending more, so same-store sales are up, they're not selling more products and services, so this means that consumers, even though they're spending more money and sometimes even getting less, which is not good. Also, another big shift that they're seeing, which has prompted them to change up their advertising budgets for the year, is a lot of these stores, particularly Walmart, is seeing a big shift towards spending on name brand consumer goods to the Walmart brand or the generic brand or the store brand. So for example, if you walk into a Walmart and you buy a box of Lucky Charms, I believe Kellogg's makes Lucky Charms, I don't even know, I don't really eat cereal too much. That would be what's called a name brand item. But what Walmart has seen over this last quarter is a bigger push towards the store brand. And here's something interesting that the CEO of Walmart said, that store brand items actually have higher gross margins than the name brand. So that in a way could be potentially lucrative for Walmart. Going over into the next couple earnings reports here. So I think what I'm gonna do when I get back to my house, I'm gonna go in my local Walmart and see what the actual cost difference is, because I really don't know. I very seldom buy like cereal and things like that. I tend to be on the go for business travel, so I really don't do much food shopping. But what is the actual difference, do we think? A box of Lucky Charms or name brand cereal, I mean, I think it's probably like $5. Oh, General Mills is Lucky Charms. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you. Yeah, I don't really buy cereal. But I think the last time I did buy a box of cereal, it was in Morton Williams, and I think I paid $5 for a box of cereal. So I wonder what like a generic brand cereal would cost. Is it $3? Is it half price? I don't know. But supposedly, a lot of the store brand products and services actually have higher profit margins for these businesses. So if consumers are stocking up on that, potentially that'll be a positive impact for their bottom line. Dennis Henry says, Tom, there's a big difference. I rarely buy name brand anymore. M sign says Russia made an offer to the U.S. for the sanctions. Ed says cereal is bad for you. Jeff says Lucky Charms versus Prosperous Flakes. Hilarious. Everybody, here's another big asset manager, Neuberger Berman. This is actually one of my favorite buildings in the city because the lobby is so unique and it's so beautiful. Check out how clean the lobby of Neuberger Berman is. It goes all the way to the back, very sleek, very nice. And then across the street is the UBS right here. Megan says, interesting, the locals Target lacking so much fresh food and cereal. That's about what's left. Yeah, so supply chain issues, Megan, could potentially be impacting some of that, you're right. Eric says at $4 to $5 gas feels like we're getting sanctioned. I know. Angelica's like, I wish my apartment looked like that. I wish mine looked like that as well. Jerry says clear is their balance sheet. Indeed. So I think we'll cross the street and then we will make our way down 6th Avenue or Avenue of the Americas and take a look at the Empire State Building as we walk down. Jack Tripper, good to see you. Marcelo says, Tom, my daughter works at UBS now. That's right, sorry about that. Marcelo, apologize. Usually I have a pretty good memory, but memory is getting away from me. But yeah, so here's UBS. Great building. You know, I have been working out of the Park Avenue office as of late. Dirk Digler says, hey Tom, how is the temperature? The temperature is pretty good tonight. I think it's about 65 degrees out. Very low humidity. We did just have a crazy rainstorm earlier today. Hey, Jewel Mars says, good evening from North Carolina, Tom. Whole Foods Amazon is big on marketing the 365 brand, which is savings of at least $1. Yeah, so I wish I could have programmed in the Nightbot the link to that Wall Street Journal article. I think it's very important that everybody read that. It was extremely well written, and we actually get to hear from the CEO of Costco, from the CEO of Walmart and Target about what they're seeing in the shift in consumer spending. And the only reason why I really brought that up today is because last week I had a lot of business travel and we couldn't cover a lot of the economic data that came out, which says U.S. households boosted spending for the 4th straight month in a row in April, while the savings rates simultaneously fell to the lowest level in 14 years. So if you remember 2 weeks ago, we covered Home Depot's earnings report, we covered Target, we covered Walmart, and revenues actually beat analysts' expectations on Wall Street. But one of the interesting things, especially coming out of Home Depot's report, is that average ticket size was up. So if you walk into the Home Depot and let's say for argument's sake, the average ticket price when a customer walks out with their receipt is $50. Now that increased to let's say $75. And these aren't the exact numbers. I forget what the exact numbers were, maybe it was around 100. But what the CEO said is even though consumers are spending more, it's not like they're getting more. They're sometimes getting less, if not the same. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. Hey, 21 Awesome is here. Says, good evening, Tom. Good to see you. Hope you are well. Jason N. This is a great looking spot. Yeah, we are right outside of the Radio City Music Hall. But if you guys want to read a little bit more about what we were talking about tonight, if you scan the QR code here, I write a free investing newsletter covering not only the US equities markets, but emerging markets, fixed income, as well as housing. So if you scan the QR code every single Tuesday after the market closes, pretty much We will send out the Behind the Street newsletter. Very good read, so join us over there. I appreciate it. I think over 1,000 people are signed up so far to receive it. It is completely free, and we will write about sort of what we talk about every single night on the streams. So Monday through Friday, we go live between New York City and Miami, and we talk about all things the stock market, the economy, the housing market. And if you want a little bit of a deeper dive on my thoughts, feel free to sign up for free, punch in your email, and I'll send it to you every single Tuesday. But now we will continue on our walk. We are right outside of Radio City Music Hall. This is West 50th Street and 6th Avenue. Hey, I see Michelle Henry here. Good to see you, Michelle. Western Mass Dave, Sally is here. Good to see you. Jerry says grabbed what I thought was a 12-pack of Mountain Dew, and it was an 8-pack. Interesting. Ramsey is here. Says, hey Tom, how you doing? I'm doing really good. How are you? Ed says, how do you think the dollar stores are going to do? Yeah, so in that Wall Street Journal article today, they actually also interviewed the CEO of Dollar General. And here's what he said. He says, from what we see, our customers are coming in more frequently, but they're buying less stuff. So this can mean, let's say if you get paid every 2 weeks or something like that, what this could potentially mean is every time somebody gets paid, they quickly rush to the Dollar General and get what they need because they're living paycheck to paycheck. And this data could back up some other data that we got recently about how consumer savings, or the savings rate, is at a 14-year low. Hey, Jewel Mar, thank you so much for the $10 donation. It says, tape for the board, happy birthday week, Tom. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it very, very much. So Jewel Mar, thank you for the donation. Much appreciated. But yeah, check out that article in the Wall Street Journal. They interviewed the Dollar General CEO as well. But from their findings, their main customer base is shopping more, but their average ticket size is a little bit less. Jonathan Schwartz says, hey Tom, how are you? Question, would you change jobs to a competitor for more money with a product that sells less and requires more development? Jonathan Schwartz, give me a clear example, and you feel free to name drop and I'll tell you my thoughts. It depends. We have a lot of spam bots in the chat tonight, everybody. Hey Tom, quick question. Would you change jobs to a competitor for more money with a product that sells less and requires more development? Hey, the Papa Smurf, the OG, says Tom sounds like a well-rounded fella. Hello from FDNY Firehouse 10. Hey, appreciate everything you guys do for us in the city. So please stay safe to all of our FDNY brothers and sisters out there. We are big supporters of law enforcement and the FDNY on the Walks on Wall Street stream. So much appreciated, my friend. Jewel Mar, appreciate it. So I guess I'll try to answer the question before you respond. So if you're selling, first of all, it would have to depend, are you selling in the SMB or are you selling in the enterprise? And I say that for a couple reasons. First reason, in this economic environment, I would not change to a competitor that is a startup. Does that make sense? So I'll give you an example. Let's say you work at Salesforce, which is the largest CRM company, or customer relationship management SaaS software company. CEO is Mark Benioff. I would not leave Salesforce to go make a little bit of a higher base salary at a startup right now. And here's why I say that. Because you have to look at the venture capital market and you have to look at the profitability of these companies. VC money, the spigot is off, or it is in the process of turning off right now. And that means a lot of these startup companies that are either sometimes pre-revenue or very little revenue and very little profits or earnings, these companies are going to get crushed. Either go out of business entirely, or they're just going to have a really, really hard time getting new capital to sustain more workers and things like that. So during economic downtrends or in tightening cycles, in quantitative tightening, when the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates, it is safer to work for a more established company that is generating earnings right now. It is not the time to go out on a limb and work at a startup, in my opinion. Now, this is totally up for debate, and I could be wrong on this, but if you want to play it conservative, this isn't the time to be YOLOing it at a startup. And I'll give you a clear example of that. During COVID, we had all of these garbage businesses go public, like Peloton and things like that. If you looked at their SEC filings and if you looked at their earnings and paid attention, you'd see that they make no money. So the only reason why they were able to grow and expand their business is because they could sell stock. And when Peloton stock was trading at all-time highs, they could afford to sell that stock to investors to raise money, to pay employees, to hire new people. Now, when interest rates go up, hold on one second. When interest rates go up, the first companies to get crushed in terms of their stock price are very speculative companies that have no earnings. And why is that? Well, you have to do all investments or all companies, investors are looking to calculate the value of future cash flows of the business. So how do you do that? Well, interest rates play a big part in that. So if I'm a software company or if I'm a startup like Peloton and I project to the market that I have no earnings now, but I am going to earn $2 or $3 a share in 5 years, there's a limit to what investors are willing to pay for those future earnings as interest rates go up. Because as interest rates go up, the value of those future earnings are now worth less today. And that's why you see a rotation out of growth and into value or more boring established companies like Coca-Cola, things like that. So the reason why I say don't shift to a competitor that is a startup or that may be a little bit smaller market cap of a company that you're working at now is because you're more prone to layoffs, and job security is probably not going to be there. But if you work for a big enterprise software company like an Oracle, a Salesforce, an SAP, or whatever, you're probably going to be fine. You're probably going to have more job security as opposed if you work at a startup software company right now, because they're really, really going to be hurting for cash. And if they're hurting for cash and if they go to their VC is going to be like, yeah, we're not looking to make any further investments right now. That's what I would say. Not to deter you from, taking a shot at a startup, but just know your risk is going to be a little bit higher working at a startup company during quantitative tightening cycles. Hey, Ron Metro TV, good to see you. So speaking of sales, here's my old office. The good old days of 46th Street. Line Sync says read dollar stores. You have pound shops there. They're doing well, some products reducing in size. So shrinkflation, I guess you're referring to, right, Line Sync? Perry Kirby suspects special purpose acquisition companies are risky for investors and employers. Careers limited for sure. Camden Lee, welcome. James, the startups can be very lucrative if you get in and stay, but things have to go just right. Yeah, and so a lot of the times if you work at a startup, they'll probably offer you some sort of equity package. But again, the amount of startups who actually make it and succeed are very, very limited amounts. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, just know that your risk is going to go up, especially as the VC spigot turns off. Wendy England says, work for a profitable company, they can afford you. Yeah. I mean, if this was back in like 2016, 2017, I would say, oh yeah, work at some of the most high growth software companies that have no earnings, because essentially what's going to happen is they want to look for salespeople that they're going to pay ridiculous commissions. I mean, some of these like Snowflake and things like that are not profitable. You know, some of these enterprise account executives are making, you know, a lot of money. Jimmy B, what's up? Megan says, will the gig economy help less developed countries, or as Goldman Sachs puts Uber, it's just a money loser? I think the gig economy is already helping emerging market economies. And I think that as the gig economy gets normalized, you could even just sell your services on your own website if you know how to market it with like SEO and things like that. But I think for now, you know, if you've heard of a company like Fiverr, things like that, a lot of software developers are getting jobs on like a contractual basis as well. So taking on multiple jobs at the same time, which could be particularly lucrative. And in essence, you could pretty much do that from wherever you want. So I think the gig economy is here to stay. But again, when we're talking about profitability, I think that we did a stream on this way back in the day in relation to the Russell 2000. So a lot of the companies in the Russell 2000 are what I consider to be zombie companies, in which case the only way that it's possible for these companies to stay afloat is perpetually borrowing more and more money to pay the interest on their already low interest rate loans, if that makes sense. So the problem is, as interest rates go up, it's going to be a lot harder for these companies to service their existing debt as money gets more expensive. So I think I actually linked in the Nightbot, I forget the Nightbot command, which one it was, but there was a really good documentary about zombie companies. I think Bloomberg put out this documentary back in 2017, which I think was really well done. I forget the Nightbot command though. Dennis Henry says, hey Tom, often name brand company makes the off-brand products too. That's crazy. That would be I never knew that. You know, I'm gonna have to do some feet on the street market research and buy an off-brand cereal and see if I could even taste the difference. All right, everybody, this is West 43rd Street. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you are new. We do these live streams about 5 days a week between New York City and Miami, so we'd love to have you here. So if you're enjoying, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe so we could talk to you in additional live streams. I could definitely tell that the city is a lot more packed than it usually is. Perhaps it's just because of Memorial Day weekend, but wow, everybody check out how beautiful the Empire State Building looks. It's lit up for the United States, Memorial Day weekend. Hey, Guzman is here, what's up? Guzman says, hey Tom, how are you? Good to see you. It's good to see you as well. Thank you for being here, Guzman, welcome. Penelope says, Tom was out in the daylight today, so we know he's not Dracula. I know, we did a little bit of an impromptu stream for the storm. Always good to see you, Penelope, from Tennessee. Andy is here from South Korea, says interesting talks. Good to see you, Andy. Hopefully you're doing well in South Korea. Brad's brain says, Tom, let's find out who makes off-brand, then meme stock it. I know, funny. Hey, Tony Lagos is here. He says, hello, my friend. How are you? Enjoying the lovely, beautiful walk in New York. Please have a coffee, and hello from Australia. Hey, thank you for that. Good to see you, Tony. Hopefully you're having a good weekend. Thank you for being here. But covering the market, obviously we've been in a really, really hefty bear cycle here. But as I always say, there will come a point where the market will turn again. There's going to be endless bull markets so long as the golden goose of capitalism does not get snuffed out by socialism. And as long as the fundamental frameworks of this country are in place, there's going to be endless opportunities. And I literally mean that, because if you think about it, as we talked about a little bit earlier in the stream, money will always flow, or energy or money, they're one and the same, will always flow to the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is the US of A, the United States of America, for a myriad of reasons. If I'm an entrepreneur all over the world, I'm not going to choose a place like China to start my business or start my startup. It's just too much risk. I think, should we continue to project to the world, people all over the world, doesn't matter what country you're from, doesn't matter what religion you are, the color of your skin, as long as we continue to project to those people around the world that if you come to America to start a business, you will have the opportunity to enrich yourself, your family. There will be an endless support of bull markets in perpetuity. So long as the golden goose of capitalism continues to roll, I don't think we have anything to worry about. Because at the end of the day, even in a bear market, entrepreneurs don't wake up and say, oh, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 200 points or down 2,000 points. I'm going to go crawl back into bed and go to sleep. No, they're out building products and services every day. Even if this market craters 50%, I'm still going to wake up every single day and do my job. Help my clients. And I think the vast majority of the world's entrepreneurs will do the same thing, and they're doing that here. So long as that very important aspect of our framework is intact, there's going to be an endless supply of new true market leaders. There's going to be more NVIDIAs, there's going to be more Amazons, more Apples, more Alphabets, an endless supply. So now we are at Bryant Park, one of my favorite places in the city. Beautiful night out, by the way. Hey, Angelica says, Tom, Whole Foods has delicious vegan donuts. I'm gonna have to check that out. I think there's actually a Whole Foods right behind me, by the way. Peter says, hey Tom, what kind of camera or phone do you use for these walks? We are using an iPhone 13 mini to walk around and live stream on. So an iPhone 13 mini. James says they've really made Bryant Park so much better than it was. Yeah, that's true. Hey Bond, James Bond, good to see you. Welcome. Miss Bash says, Tom, what's your favorite trading/options strategy for building a small to big account? I don't really speculate in the derivatives market, to be totally honest. The way that I invest is very strictly Ken Slim style. So if anybody's ever heard of like Investors Business Daily, William J. O'Neill. Investors Business Daily was actually just acquired by News Corporation, which owns the Wall Street Journal and the like. So I mainly have two accounts, right? I'll have my main retirement account, in which case I just dollar cost average into a low cost index fund that tracks the S&P 500, and that is in a tax advantage retirement account that I'll never touch until I'm like 75 or 80, and that's just pretty much on autopilot. But besides that, in my taxable brokerage account where I run a long short portfolio, it's mainly just trading with size into names that have extremely high earnings and sales growth. But a lot of those names are really out of favor now as the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. So this is the highest levels of cash that I've had in my managed accounts for quite some time. But if you want to read the book, How to Make Money in Stocks by William J. O'Neill, I think that's a fantastic book to read, especially during these times. Also, I would reread Seth Klarman's Margin of Safety. I think that is one of the greatest value investing books ever written, probably even better than some of Warren Buffett's books. So Seth Klarman runs a hedge fund right here in New York City, about Post Capital, and he is roughly regarded as one of the greatest value investors of all time. So Seth Klarman's Margin of Safety, you can get the book for free online via PDF, but I think there's only 5,000 physical copies of the book ever printed. So if you want to get your hands on an original copy, it's going to be like $3,000, but luckily you can get it for free via PDF. But really the main criteria that you want to look for is explosive earnings growth, right? Because over time, the value of a particular security will follow its earnings trajectory. So that's why I don't trade or invest in the meme stocks or the penny stocks or all the junk. Because if you look at the data over long periods of time, the trajectory of a company's earnings will support or reflect its stock price. So if you're sitting, trading derivatives on GameStop and AMC and all this stuff, I don't really think that's productive. If anything, I think it may be a little bit counterproductive. What you want to do is you want to look for fantastic companies that are compounding out their annualized growth rate in terms of their EPS by at least 25% per annum. Same thing with their revenue. You want to look for extremely high return on equity and very high pre-tax and after-tax profit margins as well. And especially in times of inflation, you want to look for the companies that have extreme pricing power. So for example, if you're a name brand, a big brand, in times of inflation, are people still going to be willing to pay up a premium for your product, right? But if you're not a well-established company with a big name brand, are people still going to be able to pay a really, really big price for your product, or are they just going to be able to toss it to the side and replace that with something else? So you want to look for good brands with pretty good staying power and pricing power. But here we are at Bryant Park, overlooking the great lawn here. Very peaceful night. Line Sync is here. This looks increasingly like the UK. May have a Labour government after the next election. They're not the epitome of all that's bad. Good to see a Line Sync. Hyatt says, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, Tom. Thank you so much, and enjoy yours as well. Nicholas says, should we get rid of pennies? They are a burden to the economy. I think all physical types of currency, I think we should get rid of. I truly believe in the next 10 years, we're going to look back and laugh at ourselves that we're physically exchanging pieces of paper and metal to each other for goods and services. Ali says, which pharmaceutical is safe to get into stock platform? I'm not sure what you mean. Hey, Sunshine After Rain is here. Good to see you. Welcome. We are sitting in Bryant Park tonight. Sunshine After Rain. Always good to see you. This is the Bank of America Tower. And this is the Salesforce Tower that we were just talking about. Big CRM company, customer relationship management. Pixelogic says, Tom, the Rangers just won. You'll see tons of happy fans near Penn Station. Ah, very cool. Maybe we'll head down there right now. Jack Tripper has seen they got rid of the last payphone. I did see that. So where was that? I think that was on Broadway and what? No, I think it was in Times Square. I forget. But that's insane. No more payphones, no more actual operational payphones in New York City. Although I don't think, when's the last time somebody really used a payphone? Yeah, Wendy England says invest in profitable companies that sell bottled water. You know, I was watching a documentary on 50 Cent, and it was so amazing how he got involved in vitamin water. I'm not sure if anybody knows the story. We can't get out this way, we gotta turn around. But yeah, I believe 50 Cent owned about 20% of vitamin water, and then when they sold, I think they sold at well over $1 billion valuation or multi-billion dollar valuation. So 50 Cent probably made over 100 million off that deal, maybe even more. So kudos to him, fantastic, great work. Oh, check out this view of the Empire State Building. Samantha R is like, or jump. Fantastic Frankie says it's, yep. Mr. Ming says, haven't used a payphone in about 13 years. Marty Lewis says the payphone story was on the TV. Was bogus. Was it really? I don't know. I saw it in the paper, something like that. Jack says, never used one. I'm 26. I turned 27 a couple days ago, and I never used one either. Okay, so we're going to exit Bryant Park near the Bank of China entrance here. And we'll head towards 34th Street, Penn Station. You know, maybe we'll do one lap around Koreatown. We'll see. But they're actually just closing up the park. I hear the guy with the whistle. So now they have the classic white here. Marty Lewis says there are other payphone booths in the city. 4 on West End Avenue. There's one at the public library and other places in the city. But do they work though, Marty Lewis, or are they just up there? I'm not sure if they work. Bob says, that real grass? It is. You know, we actually saw that when they rolled it out. They actually had like the sod and they were rolling it out here. I think that was 2 months ago now, when they took down the, what is it called? The Bryant Park Winter Village.
Park is now closed. Good night. Get home safe, all of you.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you, son.
All right, everybody, we'll head to the exits. The park is closed. So I'm assuming that means it's 11 o'clock at night, right? I don't know. I don't have the time. Can we do a quick time check in the chat? I'll give you guys a quick view of the fountain. Wow, Marty Lewis says many of them do work. So let's head out. I think I have something. I gotta get water. Hey WW, good to see you. This is Walks from Wall Street. The city looks great tonight. Good to see you. Yeah, Jerry Covey's like, we still need the pennies for wishes. Let me know if you guys could still hear me. I had to adjust the mic, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'll take the mic off for the last, let's just say hour, maybe, of the stream. Hey, Ruby is here. Ruby Falcone, always a pleasure. So Ruby, I think I saw you earlier on the stream, earlier in the day when we were doing our rainstorm, as I was walking to the deli to get the newspapers. Yeah, Penelope's like, you need to hydrate at least every hour. You know, I forgot the water tonight. So this is the Bank of China. So is there like the hockey playoffs now? I remember when we were in Miami, there was the basketball game going on. I think it was the Celtics were playing the Miami Heat. You know, I think the only time I've seen somebody actually using the payphones, way back in the day before they started to remodel Penn Station, if you guys remember correctly, there used to be this place called Hot and Krusty in Penn Station. It was a bagels place, I think, and that was, I stand by it, the best bagel place in the city. It was in Penn Station. It was called Hot and Krusty. Fantastic place, and the payphones were right next to it. But now, I mean, everything is all gutted in there because they are doing that new Penn Access project. But back in the day, in the original Penn Station, I think that's really the only time where I actually physically saw people using payphones. Wow, Anonymous Dude says, congrats to your Miami Heat, Tom. They're going to the finals. Are they really going to the finals? I thought they were getting blown out by the Celtics. I mean, then again, I don't really know anything about basketball. the Papa Smurf says, I only watch hockey for the fights. You know, I want to go see an Islanders game. So I think that, for any Long Islanders here, I should probably know this, but the Nassau Coliseum, they're going to tear the whole thing down, and the Islanders are now playing in the Barclays Center, are they not? I don't even know. Don't hold me to that, but Cindy Foley, welcome. Good to see you, Cindy. If you look all the way in the distance, you could see the One World Trade Center. It's looking phenomenal tonight for Memorial Day weekend. One of the best looking buildings in the city. Captain Super says, Tom, there were enough fights in Madison Square Garden tonight. Was that amongst the players or the fans? I know Rangers fans can get a little bit rowdy. Hey, Roomsy says, Tom, can you do a stream by Ground Zero? We can. We haven't. Speaking of that, we haven't streamed downtown Lower Manhattan near Wall Street in a long time, so maybe we'll do that tomorrow. It just turns out that I'm always in Midtown, so we'll definitely have to do that. Hey, Deborah is playing in the new UBS Arena near Belmont Racetrack. No longer at Barclays. Wow. Yeah, so Belmont Racetrack. Wow. UBS Arena. Very cool. Do you guys remember back in the day, so the New York Red Bulls is like the soccer team. They were originally supposed to build the Red Bull Arena near Aqueduct Racetrack. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that. That was way back in the day, but then they decided to build it in Harrison, New Jersey, which I thought was a big mistake. But Samantha R says, yes, Walks from Wall Street stream tomorrow. We will. So I think we're going to decide on that probably right now. I think we will either start from South Ferry. So maybe I'll take the one train to the end of the line, South Ferry, and then we'll walk back up through Little Italy, Chinatown. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Hey, Winger is here. Good to see you. So we're going to come up on a beautiful view of the Empire State Building. Fantastic. I see a question in the chat about housing or single-family home sales or existing home sales. Yeah, well, home sales fell off a cliff, actually. But I actually was meaning to ask that to everybody in the chat. In your specific housing market, whether you're in New York, across the country, what are you seeing feet on the street wise? Are you seeing houses on your block sit on the market for longer than usual? Sort of what are you seeing? Because what the data is telling us is that even though historically, if we look at the historical averages, inventory is at record lows, but inventory is slowly creeping up. But interest rates are obviously probably putting pressure on a lot of people. But we also, if we want to take the other side of the argument as well, we also have a record number of people that are buying homes in all cash. So if we want to try to calculate default risk, it's very hard to default on a mortgage if you don't have one. Now, that is still a relatively small subsegment of the housing market, people that are coming in here and paying all cash, but it's at historically high levels. But I think that rates will probably put some pressure on housing prices, but could this be the start of a trend? People are just priced out of the market, they can't afford to buy, and hopefully rates will start to bring those valuations down. I mean, maybe, but I think if that happens, I think the correction will probably be limited to like 15%. I don't think we'll see a cataclysmic breakdown like we saw in 08, mainly because underwriting standards are much better than they were. DGB says buyer's market. I mean, minor fear it's not a buyer's market yet. Yeah, so DGB, I think you're 100% right. It's still definitely a seller's market. I mean, ever since the lows of 2020, it is a raging seller's market. TJM, I sold a house above Detroit in 1 week. Wow. 1 week. The Papa Smurf, the OG, says cash is king. Agreed. Tucson says Tucson housing market is still red hot. Phoenix is as well. Yeah, Arizona is one of those markets. I think Arizona, more specifically Phoenix, and in Florida, Miami-Dade tends to be the two hottest housing markets right now in terms of price appreciation. But if we want to compare that to 2008 just for fun, we see that the housing markets that were bid up the most in 2008 were places in Arizona like Phoenix and Tucson, also in Miami. And I think the thought process there is that when times are good and people are very euphoric, people start to buy a second and third home in really nice places like Arizona and Miami. But this time, it's not that people are buying second and third homes. I think it's the option of remote working is allowing people to live anywhere. So if I'm a software engineer, why would I want to live in North Dakota or something where it's freezing? I mean, maybe you like North Dakota, but maybe you don't. Why don't you want to live in Miami or Arizona or a city like New York? I don't know. I'm just sort of, I guess, making a point there. I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening, but I think it's definitely some of the reason. But check this out, everybody. This is one of my favorite views of the Empire State Building here. Yeah, as Ruby Falcone says, 10 out of 10 view. Can't get much better. Tish TV says, hey everybody, good to see you, Tish TV. Welcome, welcome. James says, with my job, I could live anywhere, literally anywhere around the world. So James, what do? Are you a SWE, a software engineer? Anthony says, don't forget San Diego, California. I know, I like it here. Yeah, San Diego's beautiful weather, man. I think San Diego has some of the best weather in the country. Or is it San Jose? I forget. But I think either one of those two places have the most sunny days of the entire year, I think. Western Mass Dave, good to see you, my friend. Happy Memorial Day weekend. We're going to pull off to the side. I do have to put my microphone back on. I'll put you guys down on the block right here. Hold on. But right now, this is Herald Square, 34th Street outside of Macy's. All right, team, we're ready to rock. So this is 35th Street, Herald Square, 34th Street. Wendy England says, I could live anywhere as well, but my friends are here. That's true. Mr. Ming says, red, white, and blue for Memorial Day. Nicole B. Winning says, definitely San Diego. They call it sunny San Diego for a reason. You know, I got to make my way over to California. You know, maybe this summer we'll do like a week in LA or something like that. I've never been. I want to check it out. Or maybe we'll go to San Francisco to see the Salesforce Tower or something like that. Hey, Snoopy, says Tom, a contractor in South Florida bought a house, tried to make a profit, bank turned down 3 buyers. He had to rent it out and take a loss. Interesting. So what was he trying to do? Flip the house or something like that? Speculate on it? Hey, 21 Jump Street is here. It says, hey Tom, watching from Barbados. Love that. Hope you're doing well. Aroom Z says, you really like San Francisco Salesforce Tower. I do. I mean, even though a lot of people say a lot of bad things about San Francisco, which there are huge problems with crime. I mean, the local politics in San Francisco is probably some of the worst in the nation, but it's still a great city, I think, maybe. I definitely want to check it out. Everybody, I also think it's Fleet Week in New York, isn't it? So big shout out to all of the, I think the Navy and the Marines are here in the city, which is fantastic. So thank you everybody for your service. I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. And I think I could speak for everybody in the chat when we say we appreciate it. So thumbs up in the chat for Fleet Week and everybody who's a veteran or who's currently serving our nation. Love that. Big, big bull market there. But we have to wait for the light. Ooh, this car is gonna get nailed by this bus. This is the M34A Select bus. Snoopy says he tried to flip the house. You know, I've noticed that a lot in Florida and the Sun Belt region. I know a lot of people in other markets try to do that too, but it's very, very risky when trying to speculate in the housing market because it's not a very liquid market, right? Even though you can make a lot of money buying and selling houses and flipping them, I don't think it's a good idea. Because you could get stuck with the property you don't want. So I would never buy property for speculation purposes. I would either buy them to live in them as residences, or you could use them as rental properties for cash flow. But I would never speculate in the housing market to flip the houses. Because here's the main thing about the housing market and the stock market. The stock market is very liquid, which means I could go in and sell any day I want. The housing market, it's a less liquid. There's not a lot of liquidity. So, in Finance 101, you've probably learned how to read a balance sheet. So the balance sheet is in order of liquidity, right? So you could have your cash and equivalents, you could have your marketable securities, and then at the bottom you have your property, plant, and equipment. And the reason why it's lower, property, plant, and equipment is lower on the balance sheet, is because it is in order of liquidity. Obviously, the most liquid thing out there is cash, then equities, securities. But if you're trying to speculate in the housing market, what I'm trying to say is you could get stuck with a property that you have no plans to own or rent out, and that's a big issue. So just be very careful with speculating in the housing market. I would not recommend that. Usually when people try to make a quick buck or a fast dollar, they tend to do neither. It tends to be the exact opposite. They tend to go through periods of excruciating, long, drawn-out losses. So don't do that. I don't think it's worth it. Wow, Koreatown is rocking tonight. Always good to see. So we are walking towards one of my favorite places in the city for sure, which is Koreatown, 32nd Street, Korea Way. Hey, Tish TV, Corvette Girl is here. James, this sounds nice. Good to see you. Jack says, wonder if you need a doubles endorsement to drive that kind of bus. Turdy says, thumbs up and former military wife. Hey, thank you. Appreciate that as well. Love that. Yeah, Ruby Falcone says that was close. One of the things I noticed about New York City bus drivers, they will not stop, so you have to get out of the way. They are ruthless. Okay, everybody, we are here at Broadway, 32nd Street, Korea Way. The good news is we're going to see one of the best views. We're live, yeah.
Hey, hi.
Good to see you. The good thing is you're going to see one of the greatest views of the Empire State Building, I think, in the city, maybe arguably. Jason Francis, good to see you. Samantha Ars has agreed. Ramsey says, congratulations to Real Madrid fans. I think I predicted that on last night's stream. Who did Real Madrid play? Liverpool, I think? I think they played Liverpool, didn't they? Could anybody confirm in the chat? I think it was Liverpool. Somebody says, thoughts on the current World Trade Center versus the original Twin Towers? I don't think you can make a comparison. The original World Trade Centers was the most iconic buildings, I think, in the world. But the Freedom Tower is still nice. One World Trade Center is still nice, I'd say. Disney says, yeah, it was Liverpool. Hey, Red Baron, welcome. This corner was originally a Korean bank. Was it really? Very nice. So I think this is a hotel now. And I think this hotel actually originally closed down for COVID. I'm not sure if you guys remember, every time we used to stream on this block, there was always, this was always boarded up here. So maybe they did some sort of renovation. But I never knew it was a Korean bank though. Very cool. Wendy England says, I think Tom is a Gemini. I don't even know what I am. I don't really follow the astrology stuff. Wow, the ABX girl says, Tom, there was a 15-minute delay due to Liverpool fans and Paris police. My God, that's crazy. So we'll take a quick walk through Koreatown, one of my favorite places in the city. It's probably going to be extremely packed tonight, being that it is Memorial Day weekend. On top, of the New York Rangers game getting out. So somebody's saying Gemini is late May. Well then, yeah, I guess that is me, right? May 25th. All right, I'll let you guys enjoy the sights and sounds of Koreatown. Wow, I think this is more packed than I've seen it in a while.
I want to go back to the Bitches and Queens.
So we just passed, what's it called? One of my favorite Asian supermarkets in the city. And there's also one very close to New York University, which is further downtown, near 8th Street in NYU. TJM says yes. So what is the what does that mean, if anybody wants to fill me in? I've never really followed that sort of stuff. The difference between a Gemini and those things.
So I'm right here.
I never really followed it too much. This gallery to the left, so Food Gallery 32, if you go to the top floor, I'll zoom in on it so you guys can see. Pelicana Chicken is a fantastic place. So if you want really, really good Korean fried chicken, it's a little bit pricey, not gonna lie, but I would definitely check that out. Right here in Koreatown, Food Gallery 32, the second floor will be Pelicana Chicken. I think arguably some of the best Korean fried chicken in the city. Post Mom. Anonymous Dude says, Tom, I think it has to do with twin spirits. Not sure what that is. I'll have to do some research into what that is. Mr. Ming says, we saw a cat a few weeks ago in Miami. We did, and there's a rat. Lots of rats here at Koreatown tonight. Well, in the first live stream we did today, we saw three very massive raccoons. If you guys want to go back to the original live stream and check that out.
Look at this guy. Unless it's significantly faster for me too. This is coming right out the fence.
I think that's probably a mouse. I don't think that's a rat. I think it may have been a baby rat. So speaking of those blue Teslas, those blue Tesla taxis, I witnessed a horrible, horrible accident. I think this was on Wednesday. With a Tesla taxi and a garbage truck, I think. It was horrible. Wendy England says you saw a skunk in downtown Vancouver, Canada. You know, I'd like to own property in Vancouver for a couple reasons that we'll talk about on a different stream, but I think it's going to be a very long-winded answer. So we'll talk about it on a different stream. But definitely looking forward to potentially owning property down the line in Vancouver for very specific reasons. But if you guys are enjoying the live stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are new. We tend to go live about 5 days a week between New York City and Miami, talk about the economy and all things New York and Miami. Ali is here, says good evening from Iraq. Good to see you, Ali. Welcome. So we'll go across the street because there's an even better view of the Empire State Building. This is probably the only 10 out of 10 view I think we'll probably get tonight on the stream. Samantha Ars is 8.9. I think that's a pretty good score. I'd say this is probably, I think this one is a 10 in my view. Nick says, hey Tom, have you been to Pittsburgh? I have not. I really do want to go to Pittsburgh. I was just in Philadelphia though. I was in Philly. Although when I took the Amtrak to Philly, but my meetings were actually in King of Prussia, which I believe is a suburb. Of Philly. So I actually didn't even get to spend time walking around the city or anything like that. I was in King of Prussia, but I kind of liked it. The houses were crazy big. Those were some of the largest houses I've ever seen in King of Prussia. Western Mass Dave is like 8.5 because I can't see the entire top. That's a good point. Well, as we walk down 5th Avenue here, we're going to be able to see, you'll be able to see the top of it. Let's see. Yeah, Line 6 is the Empire State Building is looking very patriotic tonight. So this is 31st Street. If you walk down 31st, we won't walk down here tonight, but this is my favorite Korean restaurant down here next to the Arlo Hotel. It's actually called Take 31. It's one of my favorite locations for Korean food. Much highly recommended. Hey, Jet Life is here. Long time no see. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Always a pleasure to have you in the chat, Jet Life. Hope you're having a good Memorial Day weekend so far. Arturo says, Tom, I heard one time that they were going to build a West Side Stadium in Manhattan for the Jets and the Giants. Do you think that would have been a good idea? Well, I think it would have been a good idea for them to build the Red Bull Arena near the Aqueduct Racetrack in Queens instead of building it in Harrison, New Jersey. Because that's the only downside of going to see a Red Bull game is you have to go to New Jersey to do it. They should call it the New Jersey Red Bulls. Well, I guess you could say the same thing for the Jets too, right? Hey, Vinny Castellano from Staten Island. Always good to see you. Vinny, please send my best regards to Maria as well. And please tell her that I'm wishing her a very happy Memorial Day weekend. Anna says, yeah, they sound like dolphins. Speaking of dolphins, I believe on our last live stream in Miami, we got to see a crazy dolphin show outside of my office, which was fantastic. So if you guys want to see exactly where that was, downtown Miami near the 1000 Museum building. And that building is actually where David Beckham has a residence. So Western Mass Dave, here is another view where you can see the entire top of the Empire State Building. It looks great, lit up in red, white, and blue here. Nancy Young says King of Prussia Mall is huge. I didn't even know they had a mall. I'm gonna have to check that out next time I go there. So I took the Amtrak into Philly and then I took an Uber to King of Prussia, and the biggest takeaway that I had was the homes were insanely massive. But then again, I think anytime you're out in the suburbs, aside from like Miami or Long Island, the home sizes tend to be extremely big anyway. CS is, yeah, it's the second largest mall in the United States. Holy crap, I gotta go check that out. Well, I'll be back in Philly relatively soon. And I forgot to tell you guys, so the latter part of next week, there's going to be no stream for like 4 days. I understand you're heartbroken. It's a disaster. I get that. But we will be back streaming on Monday from Miami, Florida. I have to go to Austin, Texas. I totally forgot about the trip. But I will be flying out of JFK on Thursday morning early, landing in Austin right around, I think I get there like 1 o'clock. And I will be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So there will be no streams Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of next week. I know you're devastated, I get that, but we will have some standalone videos that will be up to hold us over until we can stream again. Hey, Cosmo Scary, what's up? Cosmo is our great moderator on the channel. Always a pleasure. Good to see you, Cosmo, and hopefully you're having a great start to the week. Wow, I think this may be the best view we've seen all night on the stream. Check this out. CS says, yeah, you got some treats we can watch while you're gone. Yeah. You know, I've never been to Austin, so I'm actually pretty excited about it, not gonna lie. Cosmos says, damn, 4 days, how will we survive? I know. I don't know how I'm gonna survive. It's become a pretty solid routine. Sherry says, no streaming from Austin, Texas. No, I will not be able to, unfortunately. I'm gonna be totally locked down and isolated the entire time. But I will be able to disclose why I'm there relatively soon, depending on a couple things. So there's always people outside here all the time. Supposedly, 230 Fifth Avenue is one of the greatest rooftop bars or lounges in the city. I don't really drink alcohol, so I've never been here, but from what I've heard from Cosmo's Scary, this is one of the greatest rooftop bars here in the city. Dennis Henry says, Tom, check out the bridges in Austin where thousands of bats fly out at night. Oh my God, I'm definitely gonna check that out. Maybe I'll try to shoot a standalone video there. Brad's Brain says, Tom, the last time I was in Austin was 20 years ago for sister's graduation. It was a crazy town then on 6th Street. Yeah, so Austin is like a mini tech hub now, so that is one of the main reasons why I'm going. Very excited to see everything there. Arturo says, yeah, Tom, I agree that they should have built the stadium for the Red Bulls near Aqueduct Racetrack instead of New Jersey. Yeah, I mean, it's also a little bit of a pain to get there too. I think the last time I've been to Red Bull Arena, I had to take the PATH train. I think it took an hour. And then when the game gets out, everybody crowds onto the PATH train, so it takes, you have to wait until, you know, tons of trains come. TJM says, Geminis love to talk and are great intellects. Is that true, or is that fake news? But I appreciate that. So we are approaching one of my favorite spots in the city, Madison Square Park. I believe this is where the original Shake Shack is, by the way. Not a huge fan of Shake Shack, but we'll have to make do. I'll give you guys one more shot of the Empire from this angle. Pacific says, Texas barbecue is great, Tom, you have to try it. So one of the days I'm there, there's supposedly this very, very famous barbecue spot in Austin, Texas. One of the most famous spots. I'm not sure what it's called, but I am slated to eat there. And I definitely will let you guys know the name of the place, but I'm horrible with names. Hey, scratching to riches, as I'm going to be in Manhattan tomorrow. That's awesome. Tomorrow is going to be packed in the city as well as Monday. But just a quick recap, everybody. For tonight's stream, we talked about how U.S. households increased their spending for the 4th month in a row, but a little bit of concerning news in relation to that piece of economic data is that the consumer savings rates have dropped to their lowest rate in 14 years. Personal income also rose about 0.4% last month, but adjusted for inflation, disposable income was about flat. So even though we're seeing all of these wage increases and things like that factoring in inflation, it's sort of a wash, which is unfortunate. So we talked about that a little bit later or earlier in the stream. Hey, Forever Duke 838, thank you so much for the $5 donation. You are much too kind, and I appreciate you very, very much. So big shout out to Forever Duke 838. Thank you for the support. It seems like there's a big event going on here too, everybody. Let's see what's going on here. Does anybody know the name of this venue? It seems like there's a ton of people out here. Hey, Buy the Books is, hey Tom, the name of that barbecue place is called Franklin Barbecue. Well, I'll be there Friday, I think. Friday afternoon, I'll be there. So anybody who's in Austin, Texas, if you're in the area, let me know. Maybe we'll meet up there. XRP says Luna 2.0 and other rug pull. Yeah, we talked about that Ponzi scheme as well in the beginning of the stream. So one of the most heartbreaking things about that whole Terra Luna story was there was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal today that was talking about, and let me just preface this by saying, I know it's never okay to victim blame, as they like to say, but there was this gentleman who was a doctor, and you can read the Wall Street Journal article. He was a doctor. He took out a second mortgage on his house to invest into the stable coin to generate 19.5% interest. I'm like, my God, I mean, all the education you go through to be a doctor, and I mean, I'm not trying to say, you should be smart enough, but I mean, man, if something sounds too good to be true, it obviously is. If something is guaranteeing you a risk-free return of 19.5% via a lending platform, my God, let's just take a step back. For you to take out a second mortgage on your house to use for any investment is crazy, okay? But to invest it into a cryptocurrency that is clearly a scheme, it sucks, because at the end of the day, the consumers are the people who are getting hurt by this, and what's gonna happen, it's gonna be the same thing that happened with that big scheme way back in the day, BitConnect. I'm not sure if anybody remembers that. That was a big Ponzi scheme, a clear Ponzi scheme. People lost millions, but Terra Luna was probably 20 times the size of that, multi-billion-dollar scheme. And people are probably going to try to band together and get some sort of retribution for this, but you're not going to get your money back. So they were doing an interview with the Wall Street Journal that says they're going to use all their energy. I think one of the quotes, I'm paraphrasing here, is the guy's like, I'm going to dedicate all my energy to try to get my investment back and the investment of all the other investors. If I could offer a piece of advice to you, it's going to sound a little harsh, but you got to move on. You're not going to get your money back. It's gone. All of it, 100% of it. And you're better off using your time and energy on forgetting about it, building back in a more sustainable way. But if you focus more of your time on this Terra Luna Ponzi scheme, your life is going to be a lot worse. You just have to accept the loss, even though it's a six-figure loss, and move on. And just use it as a learning experience and understand that these things are frauds. Hey, Jack Frankie's is here. Good to see you, Jack. Don Smith says Madoff was 7%. Yeah. Hey, Cindy Foley, thank you for being here. Much appreciated. Eric Kaufman is here. Welcome, Eric. Captain Super says, Tom, being knowledgeable is not the same as being smart. Yeah, I never want to victim blame people. And obviously, so one of the things that said in the Wall Street Journal article is these people were watching a lot of online YouTube videos. And I talk about this all the time. There's a lot of channels that are really, really big out there that talk about these cryptocurrencies, that they're these experts in this altcoins. I mean, guys, it's all nonsense. I don't want to try to tear anybody down or be negative, but I mean, it's like, my God, it's like, it's so obvious. Red Baron says all traders lose money at some point. Yeah, well, I wouldn't even consider this trading. It's like a clear, like this is like a clear Ponzi type scheme, right? Where, I wouldn't say it's the same thing as, I bought, 20 shares of Google or Alphabet and the share price decline. Like this is a clear, unregulated, unlicensed security that they were soliciting to investors and promising them a total unrealistic, unsustainable rate of return. I mean, that's criminal in my view, but obviously everything's alleged now, but I mean, that's just my take. So a big bummer, we were not able to stream on the Stranger Things night. So I think this was Thursday. The Empire State Building was all lit up for the Stranger Things, which was amazing sight to see. Jordan Roots says, hey Tom, what street and avenue this is? So we are on the corner of 23rd Street in between Broadway and 5th Avenue. So this is right at Madison Square Park, overlooking the beautiful Empire State Building, as well as my second favorite building, the Clock Tower here. And the very famous Flatiron Building. Hey, Michelle Henry, thank you so much for joining. Much appreciated. Hey, Scratching says, hey Tom, I'll be at Pier 83. Circle Line sightseeing, maybe driving there, maybe not a good idea. Ooh, I think you're right. I would, if you have the means of taking the train, I would definitely take the train, to be totally honest. I think traffic is going to be really, really crazy all day tomorrow and Monday for Memorial Day. Also, I think they're bringing in a lot of military equipment for the Memorial Day and Fleet Week. So that's probably going to take up a lot of street space as well. So I definitely advise against driving in all transparency. Hey, Captain Super says we passed the Math Museum back there across from Madison Square Park. I've never been there. I didn't even know that existed. Aaron S. says the city's vibe appears to be back. 1000%. This week in the city was crazy. Really, really nice. Cosmos says there's nothing a con artist likes better than exploiting the sense of unease we feel when it appears that the world as we know it is about to change. Very well put, Cosmo. Snoopy says I'm in Southern Florida right now. I miss New York City. Yeah, I think Miami and New York are the two, for me, they're the two greatest cities for me. So I'm very excited that I get to live in both of them. XRP says George Washington Bridge is always a nightmare. Yeah, so this taxi company, there was a horrible accident that I witnessed right outside of Macy's last week. I think it was a UPS truck. Went out of control, went off the road, flipped over that Tesla, and crushed it. I think I have some pictures of it, but I think it actually made the news. I hope everybody was okay, but I'm not sure if everybody was okay. I'm not sure. Oh wow, check this out. So one more view of the Empire. Beautiful view, might I add. Hey, somebody says, good morning from Germany. Dear Tom, wish you a great time in Austin. The Empire State Building looks great. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate that. The Bandit says, no place like New York, love Miami, but New York City in the summer is pretty great. I agree. New York City in the summer is pretty great. So now we are going to head back up, because I have to head back up anyway. So I might as well take you guys along for the ride. But we are running a little bit low on battery. But the topic for tonight's stream, everybody, we talked a little bit about the shift in consumer spending. We talked a little bit about what the CEO of Walmart, the CEO of Target, Costco, Dollar General, what they are seeing in terms of shifting in consumer spending habits. So if you want to join in on that conversation, please, you can go ahead and rewatch the stream. We spent about an hour and a half to 2 hours talking about that before we started hanging out. And it looks like they paved all these roads down here, which is great. Brad's Brains is newsletter Tuesday, Tom. Yes, we will be back to our regular scheduled programming with the Behind the Street newsletter on Tuesday. So that will be out Tuesday. Now that things are going to be dying down a little bit at work, which is good. But there will be no stream Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which is a little bit of a bummer. Ooh, a Tesla taxi, and it's open. Man, that is tempting. That is tempting, my friends, but maybe another night. If it was raining right now, 100% guaranteed we'd be jumping in that thing right now. I've never been in a Tesla, let alone a Tesla taxi. So definitely looking forward to that. Ron is here, so Tom and everybody take care. Thank you, Ron, much appreciated. So from this angle, you can see the very top of the One Vanderbilt building. One of my favorite buildings in the city as well. Christina says, Tom, is that the first Tesla taxis you've seen? No, it's not the first Tesla taxi we've seen, but I've never been in a Tesla before, ever. So I think if I ever do take a taxi, which very, very rarely I ever take a taxi, it'll probably be in one of those Tesla taxis. So this is 23rd Street. You can get the R and the W trains. Anne says it feels like being inside a spaceship. I could imagine. Supposedly, the Teslas have the fastest 0 to 60 of any car ever. And I'm not too sure about the technical reasons, but supposedly EVs have faster acceleration because all of the horsepower goes directly to the wheels. None of it gets burned off in the engine. I remember that briefly from a class I took in college. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it the right way. But supposedly in a traditional engine, internal combustion, a lot of the power gets burned off or blown off in the engine, but in an EV that goes straight to the wheels. I don't know if that's true or not. I remember hearing that in a class. My professor was saying that. Seems like a lot of high profile people are at this nightclub here. There's a lot of nice cars. It reminds me of Miami. Very rarely do we see really nice cars in New York City. Hey, Roy S is here. What's up, Roy? Always a pleasure. Hey, Design Ideas. Thank you so much for the $5 donation, my friend. Says, hey, Tom, happy Memorial Day weekend. Thank you, Design Ideas. I wish you a very happy Memorial Day weekend as well. You know, maybe we'll have the skateboard on Monday for Memorial Day. I will be back on Long Island on Monday. But I think we'll end it here because we're on 5% battery. So thank you everybody for joining. It's much appreciated. Have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. Be safe out there if you're going to be in New York or whatever city you are. Obviously, it's definitely a time for partying and having fun, but please do it responsibly. We want everybody to be safe. But everybody, thank you so much. If you want to sign up for the Behind the Street newsletter, if you type !news, NEWS, in the chat, feel free to click the link. The Nightbot will drop the link, and we will be back on our regular scheduled programming. Every Tuesday, we will send out the newsletter, so feel free to join us there. So Samantha R, much appreciated. Vladimir, Western Mass Dave XRP, Mitchie, FredX, Captain Super, Samantha R, Sophie M, Andy, all of our veterans and service members as well. Big shout out and token of appreciation from me and everybody in the Walks in Wall Street chat. We appreciate everything you do for our country. Much appreciate everything you do. And to the Mighty Bull, have a good night wherever you are, because there is always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. If you enjoyed the stream tonight, leave a like on the video and subscribe if you are new, and we'll see you right back here in the greatest city on earth, New York City, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.